Hi, everyone. So quick backstory of myself. So those that don't know me and kind of know why I'm here talking about brand and tech. So I ran an agency for 15 years in the ecosystem of early days Shopify. I started my company when I was pregnant with my son. Wouldn't recommend that, but that's what I did. And was so thankful to see the problems that we were solving in the marketplace at the time, 15 years ago, was getting people online for selling their products, right? I was going around to different retail stores, helping them set up websites. My co-founder, Rachel, that I brought in at the time, was doing strategy. And so I share that backstory to say where we have come from 15 years ago to today is like light years in what's possible. So in my career, I've launched over 400 websites and executed companies from startups to multi-millions of dollars. We've even done big enterprise companies over the years. And all of that learnings and all the different components of change go back to some simple things that we really need to think about going forward. So my passion and conversation today is how can we actually have brand and tech be the new growth engine for AI-powered e-commerce? And the last speaker was so great at talking about customer service and CX, which is very, very important. But the customer service side doesn't happen if people don't find the brands and have the technology behind it of what they're actually starting to engage with so they can become a customer, right? So we've got to start getting customers that understand how the brands and technology work. So there's a few stats I want to share that I just find fascinating based on the research right now. AI traffic to US retail sites grew 393% year over year in Q1 of this year alone. So for those of you that are using Claude every day like I am or other tools, we're seeing a massive change that's happening. But the most important thing of that stat is 42% converted better than non-AI traffic in March of 2026. It was a new record high. And that's from Adobe. So Adobe is doing this big brand push right now with their latest tools that is showing that technology and branding, they're trying to put out brand assets at a 10x level, right? All of us have probably seen it. We've seen AI improve a lot, but there still has to be humans architecting the change of here. So I am very pro-human and pro-growth when it comes to business. And I think the vision for everybody in this career set is how do you actually leverage some of these technology tools to give you better outcomes? So you almost need to become an AI architect of these different tool sets that make you more effective to how you can actually get the outcome that you need within your organization. So I'm going to slow down on this a minute to also tell you some more stats because I find this so fascinating. So first off, we've seen massive growth for those that are doing converted brand traffic. So 14% of e-commerce traffic now originates from AI interfaces, a channel that did not exist 18 months ago. 14%. And that all happened in 18 months. Another really interesting fact is Anthropic wasn't even around 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And now it's a massive, insane company. What I find so fascinating and why branding is so important with these statistics and what we're seeing when it comes to technology and AI is more and more people are just researching stuff that they want. Let's say I need a new pair of shoes, but the AI and the algorithms are pulling up brands that have more affiliates and more connections and more structure. So think back to the old web days when you were building out SEO and keywords and different things. You now have to do that in multiple channels in multiple ways and put out content that actually matters to your brand, but it has to be in a structure to your brand voice, the identity of the company, how you're actually structured in your CSS and the website. So think like the plumbing pieces of the sites are becoming more important now than ever. The last year, I saw a big drop around what we saw for people like doing migrations or big builds. There was this question, can we just use AI to build out websites, all of this? And all of that changed the industry dramatically. What is happening now in real time and going forward into 2026 is it's becoming more important than ever that your house of your site becomes clean, no more technical debt, that it says what you do and how you do it very clearly. Nobody wants AI slop of a bunch of words. We want it to be simple and clear and active to what the problem is that you're solving. So why is that so important for companies to look at when it comes to branding and tech now? Well, a couple of other things. So like we said, 14% of e-commerce now originates from AI interfaces. Why is that so important for us in this industry? We're seeing big waves of Shopify integrating, with ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, but we also are seeing a new setup of the ground moved. So what does that mean? The question isn't whether to adopt AI, it's what kind of growth engine you're building on top of it. So for example, just like those of you who know the Shopify ecosystem, there's a million apps out there that you can do, right? But it's important to only have a few of them. Why is Gorgeous so great at what they're doing compared to others? Like the fewer apps that you have that have a function towards the outcome, the better and the cleaner that your brand can actually lean into scale when it comes to knowing that you're deploying what you actually have. What is happening now with AI is the same problem, but on a 10x, 100x level. There's new AI companies up every single day, and most of those tools are not going to last for the long haul. So what's really important is the false choice. You have to kind of name the trap that your audience is in, meaning that the operator of your company, like tech is for efficiency, brand is for emotion. There's two budgets, two teams, two roadmaps. Usually they were separate. Why is that wrong? I think the future needs to be brand and tech combined because universal access to AI models has commoditized capabilities like copy generation, offering tailored and service automations. So what does that mean in like layman's terms? We are seeing an adoption of tech happen at such a level, but what is different is the tech is getting smarter, but our human brains, we have to start thinking differently. So the real question is brand and tech equals a growth engine, but this is how we have to also start thinking differently from linear to circles. What do I mean by that when it comes to circles? Okay, so I saw this brand, for example, I'll just tell some stories that probably help bring it back to earth a little bit because sometimes I get very techie up here. There's this amazing company that I won't say the name of right now just due to our NDA, but they had this incredible product and they wanted to make sure that their listings were able to rank better on all the LLMs as well as have their website start telling more of the story. And so they were going through a branding refresh. They wanted to overhaul the entire look and feel. And in order to do that and have them come up in the same way, they had to do a couple of things that were a little bit slower to speed. So one of them was they had to structure out an entire new CSS class in their website based on what their new fonts and colors and structure was. And they had to identify their new tone of voice, which tone of voice specifically is so important for brands to get right. Just like the tone of voice in your customer service, you have to start thinking of how does this actually look and feel into the tech that we're doing and slow down enough to actually speed up. I think I'm looking at one of the questions. You said, what's one area where companies are overestimating AI's capabilities? I can name a lot of areas that companies are overestimating, but I think the problem isn't overestimating their capabilities. The problem is underestimating your knowledge as a human of what we can do to figure it out. And what do I mean by that is the tools are smarter and better than ever. The problem is, as humans, we're getting too distracted and too pulled into different ways to not do deep work anymore. So if you can actually block out the noise, focus on an outcome you want to do, and prompt something until you get it better and better and better, and do the deep work to make that happen, that's where the outcome is going to actually be in terms of the case. So, for example, web design, because I love that you brought that up, Miguel. Like, people thought, okay, I'm just going to deploy all these AI things to do web design, but they're not actually looking at the data-backed research on it. So it's important to use these tools, but also have a true expert look at what are data-backed insights that are going to move the needle forward to design. And then ultimately, how can you be more creative towards the influencing like the kind of people that you want to. So brand, tech, growth engine. So think of it like brand times tech equals a growth engine. How do we do that in very specific ways? So one is I do see that 3 jobs that brand does in an AI powered system that is getting backed by data that is going to be the future. So I'm very pro positive AI and positive humans. So I think even though some companies are replacing jobs with AI, they're now creating new jobs. And what is happening is in these 3 areas that I'm seeing a lot of improvement. One is legibility. So brands make you findable. Adobe data shows that a major portion of US retail websites are not entirely readable by machines, limiting visibility across AI search results. That is the biggest nugget of information that says we need to upgrade our systems. And this is the year of websites more now than ever. 32% of digital leaders declared that generative engine optimizing their top priority for 2026. And with 97% of digital leaders already reporting positive impacts from GEO efforts. 97%. That's massive. So what we're seeing happen is the tech is getting smarter and faster, but the people that aren't adapting to learn different ways to plug in things and test and verify, they're seeing the results, but they have to be doing it in a way that really is honestly deep work, slowing down to speed up, giving yourself that ability to be like, how can this brand get more findable? And then constantly ask in a feedback loop the algorithms to get something that you can actually deploy on. So that was a super interesting one of the 3 jobs. The other one I see is defensibility. When AI generates everything, only story is unique. So 41% of consumers say they trust generative AI search results more than traditional advertising, meaning your brand voice now has to live inside the AI's answer, not just in your ad. This is really important. And this came from Business of Fashion magazine and a couple of other articles, because the AI has to know your voice and your brand. And they're pulling that from your website, from Reddit, from anywhere else on the internet that talks about you. Branding is what they say is what people say about your company emotionally when you're not in the room, right? Now you need to define that even more in terms of your story and execution on your site and on your other things, because your ads are not getting read in the same way as your active content. So defensibility about your brand and your story is really important. The third one that I found very fascinating is data substrate. So what is that? That is your brand is the training data for every personalized recommendation, every agent mediated transaction, brands that need to balance machine readiness with storytelling, striking imagery, and distinctive digital identity, right? So basically, we got to simplify. We have all the data in the world. We can literally prompt something on our fingertips and know more in 10 minutes than people could 20 years ago for hours of research. That's amazing. But what is a problem is it's causing people to have analysis paralysis, where they don't know what to do next and are a little bit confused on getting the gap simplified. So I think the most important thing is brands to start structuring down to really speak personally to their customer and to how they can like leverage into this new world with the right kind of technology and creative that simplifies. So the implementation gap is really also where I see a lot of opportunity for people in this space, because everybody's unique point of view can kind of come from different areas. But I actually interviewed 11 operator companies that I've worked with and did some data pulling ahead of this presentation to kind of find some interesting data. So I'm going to give you my field notes of these. The patterns that we're seeing operators get predictably wrong in a sense of when it comes to branding. So there's a couple of things. One, the self-audit trap, using LLMs to audit the stack they live in. That's a problem because it doesn't pull active data of people that actually know the tech stack and have used it across multiple brands. If they're just asking LLMs on it to audit the tech stack, they're seeing some problems in that because it's not always giving accurate information. And so you need to test and verify. That's one. The second is your brand voice blind spot. So brand work, so like let me back up on this. Brand voice blind spot is like brand work stops at creative, never reaches the data layer. You can't have branding not have data connected with it. For the first time in history, we can actually monitor and to a conversion rate level art, right? You can know exactly what your creative is doing in terms of impressions, in terms of sharing, in terms of anything that you're seeing, because everything is being tracked on a data layer. So no longer can we have brand voices being in a blind spot. We have to have brand and tech connect in order to reach better growth and also see what is moving the needle forward. The other thing, so again, I'm going to go back to, these are my field notes from asking 11 operators of something that they were doing in AI that was kind of not working, right? Is PE tech stack inversion. So a lot of brands that are owned by different PE firms or VC firms, they're trying to do a tech stack across all the same kind of companies, like horizontal solutions, but they're not D2C native. And the problem with some of that has been when you pipe things together that aren't active and personalized to that brand, you can cause more mistakes. So a good example is one company that had 3 brands across one website because they wanted to run one Shopify site, but have 3 brands across it. And the issues were when they started piping in some of these things, then their brands were running together and they weren't staying in their same lane as their own identity. So it's really important that you think through who is your target market, how are you speaking to them, and then how are you using these tools to optimize your humans in a whole different way so that you're getting better customer service, right? So that was very interesting. Another interesting fact from this interviews that we did was that we kept seeing wrong team problems. So CX led when it should be growth led, for example. So I love this conversation because we're on a CX conversation here, and customer service is so important. But customers are always going to give you feedback of what's best for them. Growth-led side and customers need to be talking hand in hand, but now your customers are getting influenced by AI in a whole different level. So you have to almost take yourself innovative to think, how can I be growth-led based on the data I have, but not be reactionary to certain scenarios, instead be innovative and be leading in terms of co-creating from the brand. That was super interesting to see that kind of problem. So that was like focusing on the wrong problem, like as opposed to like the growth side. So let me just frame some of these statistics for you. Despite high adoption rates, just 7% of organizations have moved beyond experimentation to fully scaled AI deployments. Only 7%. And consumers' demand for AI shopping is real. 39% adoption, 805% traffic growth, but conversion lags 86% worse than affiliates because merchant infrastructure was not built for agents. That is massive. The biggest thing I think we're rolling into is how people can look at their tech stack to have those moving forward in a different way.